All right, looks like I'm live. Hey, everybody, it's Jason from Ronin Bodyboards doing another Boog Chat tonight. So, guess I'll kill a few minutes just talking about my week a little bit. Been working on, got 9 boards in the queue. One of them's done pretty much because I had to build it fast. But the other 8 are kind of sitting back here. They're part of the last chat too, so made quite a bit of progress. Maybe we'll get into that a little bit. But so yeah, I've been working on boards, got a few other wood projects and stuff going too. Looks like somebody's here already. Hello. Yeah, I got a few sessions. There's actually been some swell this week. I still haven't ridden number 420. I don't think the swell was, even though it was a little bit of size, it really wasn't that good out there. The shape was maybe a little too west, so there's a lot of closeouts, not a lot of makeable shoulders, at least in my section of the beach. So yeah, I got a couple sessions down by Morro Rock. If anybody's familiar here with the beach here, we have a huge rock that sits out in the bay here. It's like 562 feet above the ocean, and there's an estuary that wraps in around that. But there's some really good surf spots all around that big rock. So I tend to go down there when the waves tend to get a little better, just because if things get broken up a little bit down there versus the beach break out in front of my house. So yeah, you can get some incredibly long rides at the rock on a good day. So yeah, I went down there. Got a session down there a couple days ago. Surfed out front this morning and yesterday. So yeah, there's been some waves. Yeah, but I've just been riding I think it's 327 is the board I've been riding for over a year now. It's the white one with the green bottom. So it's a good board. Hey, somebody's here. I don't know who's here, but if you got a question, you want to throw something, say hi, find the chat and click away. I know there were some people asking me in the past week about if they were watching on a phone and how to kind of get into the chat and be able to ask questions and whatnot if you're watching on a phone versus a tablet or a PC or a laptop or something like that where you have a keyboard. I know I usually watch a lot of this stuff on my PC or my laptop, so I don't really know. I think there's a live chat button somewhere if you're watching on a phone, and then that'll pull up a little window where you can make comments if you have I think you might have to have a YouTube account to be able to do that. I'm not real sure, but if anybody has any knowledge about that, feel free to throw it into the comments or whatever this video, because I really know there's some people who've been trying to just watch on their phone but haven't been able to make any comments. So if anybody is watching this and has suggestions on how people can watch live on their phone and make comments, and people can watch, but they're having trouble commenting if you're on a phone. So like I said, I think there's a live. I got on my phone before the feed started and found it, and I was able to find a live chat button. And like I said, it brings up a little window on the bottom part of the screen. You might be able to make comments that way. Got a few things I want to talk about, topics. I dropped that. I added that into the description down below. So I'm going to go back to all the previous Boog Chats and add all the main 3 topics that I've been covering since the very first one. And I'll add that into the description of all the old videos, and then start adding that into all the new ones too. So that'll kind of help people if they're trying to find a specific topic they remembered or heard or only got to see part of. They'd be able to find it a little easier. So I'm trying to make it a little more efficient for people watching these videos. Anyhow, I want to get into. I know last week I showed everybody my. If anybody was here, I could. I brought out my first custom board I ever got. The old Toobs hex. You can kind of see it's still sitting back here. I kind of got it out just so we can compare that one versus the one that I went to afterwards. The first board I got was pretty standard. It's 42 inch. It's kind of thick. It's probably in the 2 1/4 to 2 3/8 range. It's kind of way thicker than what I normally ride these days. Clip crescent, standard channels. No bells and whistles. Pretty much, no bulbs, nothing, no deck contours. Very standard issue, really. But it was custom. I got to pick all the colors and whatnot. And I got to pick my stamps. The hex stamp and whatnot. So I don't know. I must have rode this board for at least a year probably before I went back to Toobs and was like, okay, I think I want to do some different things on my next board. And I'd seen somebody out there, a brand, it might have been, I think Hot Butter had a V tail, and something about this, the clip crescent tail I noticed because of the pegs here. I noticed a lot of side slip when I sat back on the tail, and I was trying to figure out how to get my tail to lock in more, just to give you a little more control. So, and I was kind of intrigued by a V-tail. There's a lot, if you look at surfboards, there's a lot of surfboards out there that have V-tails and stuff. So like little, they call a swallowtail maybe or something, that where it's cut backwards on a surfboard, but it's kind of the V style, like the one you kind of see right back here. So I don't know. I mean, obviously you can pull some reference from surfboards into bodyboard design and go, well, shoot, these guys have been doing this, making surfboards a lot longer than people have been making bodyboards, and it seems like that little detail has some merit. So when I went in, I was like, okay, well, first off, I want to try a different tail on my board. I'm not really too hip about the clip crescent, just because there's a couple things about the clip crescent that I'm not too fond of. Is that it's real side slippy, because of that clip. And then on the top side, because of the full crescent that you have, I noticed that in certain situations when the lip was coming over on me, and kind of maybe if you get caught by the lip, it kind of blasts you sideways a little bit. I noticed that it was sometimes if it caught my legs or my feet or something, the lip did, it would I would get a little loose on the tail. So just, sometimes you'd be sliding around on the crescent side of the tail, your body and your hips and your thighs, which it just tends to, you slip and slide around a curved surface like this more than what I was looking for. I wanted to somehow lock my hips into the tail of the board. So, I mean, there was that I wanted to look at. I was like, man, I'm tired of slipping and sliding around these tails. Is there anything that we can do to kind of improve that? And then, so incorporated that into it. And also, standard channels. I was like, okay, man, I want to improve the grip of my next board. What other kind of channel systems are out there that you guys that are not just a typical 2 to 3.5 inch kind of standard channel that you get on most boards? And they're like, Toobs guys were like, oh, well, we got this, like what they called an easy flow channel. So, and that's like a wide to narrow kind of channel. So anyway, so this is the board this is my second Toobs custom board that I ever got. So it's got, it's got the checkered rail, checkered pinstripe on it too, a black and yellow pinstripe. It's a V-tail, but V-tail board, it has the easy flow channels. I don't know if it's kind of hard to see them, but what it does is it goes from a really wide, it went deeper into the board too. It's one of the first ones that were, instead of just being a standard channel, it got cut further into the board. So, and it has like a little, I don't know if it really shows because it kind of whites out a little bit on this video, but you can kind of see it has just a small little V right here in the center part of the board. So it goes real wide here to a little bit. It's still wider than what a normal channel would be, but it's almost like a full concave. It just has this little V right down the center. So I went with that. I was like, okay, and then also on this board, they because it's slipping and sliding around the tail. I don't know that you probably still slip and slide a little bit around a V-tail because it's real similar to a crescent, but it does have the little V point in here. I'll get to that in a second. But so what they suggest is maybe they had these thing called hip grooves back in the day, and they would just carve in a little bit of hip grooves back into this board. So those are the things that I added into this board is, and it's an inch bigger. Can I see your board? Your board's right there, Sterling. Look at it. It's right there. Hey, and if anybody has any questions, you guys can interrupt me at any time talking. I'm just going to keep on talking about my boards until I get some questions in the live stream. So feel free to ask me any questions, and I'll get to them as soon as I can. So I'm just going to get through this real quick. When were these boards from? Early 2000s. This board was probably around 2003, I bet. My first board was in 2001. Yeah, it was probably 2001. So this might be 2002, 2003 was when this board was made. So yeah, I went with a V-tail, hip grooves, still, and my first board with no slick bulbs too. I was like, man, I want better grip on up here. And it's also an inch longer. I was thinking, man, maybe if it's an inch longer, it'll help me catch waves. I was still learning. I was my second real board ever. So I was trying to learn how to catch waves. So I wanted a little bit more board to maybe help me get into catching waves. So this is a great board, man. I caught a lot of really fun waves on this board. And I really learned, just switching it up and getting a V-tail versus the clip crescent. Because, like I said, I've gone over this on a few other chats. Any tail that exits to a point versus a clip is going to, when you sit back on the tail and put that tail corner in, it's going to hold and it's not going to side slip as much as a clip crescent will. It just the tail corner bites into the wave face much better. So this is my second board. I mean, no mesh. I mean, it's really, it's still kind of the same shape, real standard wide point towards the middle part of the board. Not really pushing it forward like what we do with more modern prone boards. Some of the more classic prone shapes were rounded and curved. The wide point was a little bit further back on it than what we do today. So, yeah, I mean, this is more of just a typical thing. But man, I really had a lot of good waves. I learned a lot, so much on this board. But even from then, I was like, okay, well, like also the V point right in here. What I also started doing was when I go to duck dive, I would throw my knee right into the crotch of the V, and it's really like you're almost tripoding when you go to duck dive. It really helps it improve the duck diving. So you just really lock into the board when you're duck diving. Something really good about a detail, and so. That was really what kind of started me on the journey with the V-tail thing. I had so many. Well, I'll probably pull them out over the time. Is that I rode V-tails for years before I came up with scallop stuff. So most of my older custom boards are all V-tails. Sterling, have you done DK boards with crescent and scallop tails? Yeah. DK boards, yeah, definitely, for sure. I mean, DK boards, there's been a couple of scallop tail DK boards, but a lot of guys tend to go towards the full crescent thing on DK boards. So it's kind of hard getting guys to get into the scallop thing when it comes to DK stuff. I think a lot of guys really like that clip, the full crescent on. But hey, why not try it? It's only going to hold and bite, and then when you sit back on the tail a little bit more, I think that people need to start trying scallop tails more on DK style boards. I really think there's something to that tail. It works for prone or DK or stand up or combo, whatever. I really think it's a great tail. 3 to 6 channels. Well, that's also with the scallop tails is that the scallop, it all depends on what the channels there. It's kind of a cohesive design with the scallop layout and then how many channels and what channel setup you have, because the ribs of the channels need to line up with the points of the scallop so that it all kind of work. The tail and the channels kind of work together to hold through steeper wave faces or turning and carving, or when you're leaning forward to drive, the channels track and everything just works together. Jack, yeah, 3 to 6 compared to the V-tail. Jack's asking how does the full crescent with the 3 to 6 channel compare to a V-tail, or do you prefer a scallop tail by a long shot? Now, I have my very first 6-channel board was number 13, I believe. That's the very first full 6-channel all the way through a board. It has a full crescent on it. It works fine. It was definitely, I caught a lot of great waves. I mean, all of my boards, I really want to come now that I'm kind of amped on this, is I want to probably pull out a couple of boards a week and go over them, and it'll show you the evolution of all my custom boards. I really do kind of prefer the scallop thing these days, although on my Tombstone that I've been riding forever and a day, it's a V-tail. It's a single, double to quad channel, and it kind of works really good with the V-tail. And there's something about the V-tail on a Tombstone board, because that's more of like the traditional pipo shape, is that you look a lot of those old pipos, the wooden pipos, the belly boards that they rode in Hawaii back in the day, and a lot of them were rounded noses and they had V-tails on them. So it kind of, I want to kind of stay true to that old pipo shape. Is that so? But I've definitely done scallop-tailed tombstones and DK'd tombstones. I just want to build what people want me to build. So hey, if you got an inclination to try something new, give a scallop tail a go. I really think it's a good setup for any discipline. You just got to find out what you want to ride. Yeah, Sterling, I saw you riding your prone board on the. Was that the DK pictures you posted the other day? Was that on the prone board, or was that with the DK one I made you? Sessions, you're asking about what's a scallop tail. I got a couple back here in the batch I'm working on, so let me pull those out real quick. Hey, we'll look at Sterling. Want to see his board, so this is Sterling's board. Sterling's board, it's like the one that he's riding now. It's a 3 to 6. You can kind of see some of the. I'm getting into the bumper and tail shape and work. This is a scallop tail. So what It's based off of a full crescent, but what there is there's like little crescents in between all of the ribs of the channel work. So it kind of get a little extra scoop in between every one of the channels, and you get these little points that help bite and hold when you sit back on the tail. You get way less side slip on a tail like this than you would with the clip crescent. So, and this one goes from 6, because there's, this is a 3 to 6 channel, so it starts 3 in the front and then fades to 6 out the back of the tail. So there's 6 scallops on the bottom of this, but then I've learned over the years that going with the 3 on the top, just scooping out, this kind of keeps on white now. So I just go 3 scallops on the top, and what that does is it really your hips and thighs really lock into these two things, and your body doesn't slide around. That was one of the things we were talking about more before with the clip crescent and the V tails. That your body tends to slide around those tails a little bit, where a scallop tail, just especially on the top side of the board, because of the 3 scallops, it really locks your body into your hips into the tail of the board. You just don't slip and slide around that. And then this one doesn't have its deck contours in yet, but once you get the deck contours, you get extra. You saw hip grooves on the other one, but those old hip grooves have been kind of incorporated into the deck contours that I put on these scallop tail boards. And if you get deck fold like the normal my normal deck contours, that's what this all gets hollowed out with those hip grooves. Not only do I router out the shape, I actually shape out a little bit more out of these 2 tail corners that helps lock your hips into the tail of the board. So that's kind of what a little short overview of what a scallop tail is. And if you have a like say if you have a quad channel versus a 6, you'd have 4 little scoops here instead of 6. Ask anybody in this feed that has a scallop tail. No one's gonna say they don't like it. I mean, it has crazy good hold, man. I mean, it really does improve the performance of the board, in my opinion, for sure. So going back to I want to try to get through the next board real quick before we eat up too much time here. So after this board, I rode this board probably a year and a half, my second one. But then I went and got my third board. And so my third board, I was like, okay, I really like the channel system on it. I love the V-tail. So that was just an automatic given. It's the V-tail again. But I was like, okay, well, I like the channel system on this. It works really good. But what happens if we just get rid of that center bump and then you just do a full concave on the bottom? So definitely went with that. So this is my third board. So and I want to improve the deck side of the board too. I was like, okay, well, we got hip grooves on this. So that Toobs had a couple older models. I forget exactly which ones. I think it was Patriot or something. It was one of the weird just one-off year models where they put this horseshoe cut in around. You can kind of see it on this one. So I wanted to do that. I wanted to do the start incorporating deck contours and be able to lock my elbows and get thumb wraps in all the way up and around the board. So this is some of the earlier one. This one just had the horseshoe cut out, and I went with the normal hip grooves like I had on the other one, but they didn't really connect through. So this is the next board that I rode for quite a long time. So it just has a full single concave on the bottom and a V-tail, and I went back to 42. The other one was 43. My original board was a 42. Then I went with 43. Then I went back to 42. I just felt like 43 was a little bit too much. It was a little too much length for me. I wanted a little bit shorter, a little bit more maneuverability. I'm a tall guy. I'm like 6'3". So most people tell me like, oh, geez, you need to be riding like a 43 or a 44-inch board because your height. I don't believe about that stuff. I say ride what feels right to you. Charts and references like that, those are just baselines for where you should start. But then you go up and down and experiment with shorter and longer boards, and you find out what size really works for you. That's really the only way to find out. So you can see, like, okay, so I rode this board for quite a long time, but then I was like, okay, I can see this board started to get a little bit of elbow crease. I don't know if you can see it here, but I was like, okay, I know this is where my elbow's landing on this. And if you can see, this board, I don't know if you can kind of see the pencil line that's on here. It comes like right through here, around here, and then out the tail, back through here. So I just sat down with this board with I think it was just a Sharpie pen, and drew these lines, and I was like, okay, this is the contour that I want on all my boards from here on out. So I rode this board for at least another year or two. But then I was like, okay, when I went to get my next board after this, and then, that's probably going to be next week when I break that out. But I was like, okay, I want this contour on my board. So what I did was I had full-on wood shop back then. I wasn't even making boards yet. So what it was, I sat down and I in my shop and I made this template right here. And I've showed this template in one of the older ones, but that is the outline of the inside of this right here. And this is the template I use to do all like my contours you see on all my boards. So this board is where this template came from, and I've used this template for hundreds of boards now. It's crazy how many of the boards I've used this template for. It's really universal too, man. It'll work for a 4. I just did there's a 46 in here, and and Sterling's is a 41 or 41 and a half. So this thing will work for any of those templates. I just shift it forward a little bit back because you kind of want your elbow to land in this one little crease here. So sometimes I'll shift it forward or back just a little bit depending on the length of the board. So anyway, I mean, that's the next 2 of my personal custom boards. So if anybody's got any questions, throw them in the thing, and I'll get to them as soon as I can. Jack. Jack's asking about the tombstone shape up there, and so tombstone, like I said, it's based off a Pipo shape, and it's real wide, super wide point forward, something like the 12-inch range, I believe, and then really wide tail. And what happens is you get this just a really long straight rail, and man, they're just super fun. It's super fun to ride. They're so fast on the rail, it's crazy, and they have all the extra planing surface because they're so wide, and they're so wide through the tail, and there's so much. The wide point's pushed so far forward, you get all this extra volume in this thing, and they're super fun to ride. Spin great. They're great on small waves. They're just wave catching machines. And then how do you want to trick it out? My personal tombstone, it was real early on. I think it's number 26. It's over 4 years old, and I still ride it on all my small days. It's the only board I go to on small days, under 3 foot. Anything over 3 foot, I usually am riding my regular board. So yeah, that's kind of the and like I said, the theory behind it. I pulled basically the designs came from old Pipo boards. Yeah, I think Sterling has a I think your first board was a tombstone. He bought it off the website. Yeah, Jack, I know you had a couple boards. I'm stoked that you're stoked on the boards. Yeah, that's the stuff that fuels my fire to keep doing what I do, is that, all the positive feedback. I mean, every once in a while somebody's not going to be happy with something. That's fine. I can take that in stride, because the good far outweighs the bad with everything that people comment back to me. I mean, yeah, sure, there's going to be somebody every once in a while that's a little disappointed with something, but all in all, I think I'm doing pretty good with keeping people happy with the product I deliver. So I'm going to keep on doing it, and as long as things stay positive and I'm happy doing it and having a good time, I'm not going to stop doing this. I really do enjoy the process. I also wanted to get into, I know there's been some other questions about the differences between black PP core and white PP core. Okay, so I definitely want to touch on that a little bit before we were starting to run out of time. I mean, we're not even halfway through, but I know this little section, I'm sure I'm going to get some questions about it. But so I got a few samples sitting right off the camera. Pull those out and take a look at some different cores here in a second. Jack's asking, would doing double rails and a nose piece be adding enough foam to add float without adding length or too much thickness? I'm loving the nose piece on my new one. Okay, so double. Well, we're already doing double rails. You already have your pinstripe and your outer rail. All my boards have 2 rails on them. There's an inner rail and an outer rail. And now, as far I don't know. I mean, like, if you want to add volume to a board, there, you go wider, you go thicker. That's how you add volume to a board. I don't think adding skins kind of gives a whole lot of. I mean, sure, it's mass and volume, and there's going to be some float that you get out of going a little bit, adding extra skins on for sure. But I think it's probably better to add that mass into the core instead of the outer skins. So I'd say if you wanted a thicker, beefier board, you put that into the core. And we're actually going to talk a little bit about that tonight once we get through some of this core stuff. So PP cores, I pretty much industry standard is the white stuff. And man, I'll tell you what, the last batch of core I got from my supplier is A+, man. I've made all 18 boards are that first shipment from my new supplier. All the cores are pretty much used up, and I have another order coming after the first of the month, and I'm sure hoping it should be the exact same stuff. This stuff is killer, man. It's kind of hard to see here because I know the stuff whites out in here because I'm not on a production level where I got all these crazy lights and whatnot. So just doing this on my laptop. But this core is a white PP core. This stuff's really good. I mean, I've had some stuff in the past that's been maybe a little bit softer. That's the thing about the cores is like it's so weird how batch to batch it can be different. It's even though you're buying a 1.9 pound polypropylene core, it can still be a little bit different. Even from last order to this order, you're always I'm rolling the dice. Like what showed up this time, and that's one of the things that Buzz used to talk about all the time was the inconsistency in the materials. And you're supposed to deliver a consistent product, even though you're getting inconsistent materials. So that's one of the challenges in doing this game is dealing with the inconsistencies with the product. But like I said, this last batch of PP core is A+. So like I said, I've gotten softer stuff in the past. And basically what it is you'll start seeing a little bit more, instead of being really dense, this stuff, you don't see any air pockets at all in this foam. There's just no place for air or water to get into this. This is good stuff. Where now you start looking at this black PP core. Now I've had black PP core in the past. I haven't ordered it the last few batches but I have quite a few of my personal Ronin boards are made out of this black PP core. It's still really good. I think it's a little bit lighter, only because if you look at it, you can kind of see it has tiny little air pockets sometimes between the beads. So I think it is just a little bit lighter. I don't know if it has more. This stuff is like some of the older, similar to the older PP that I was getting was a little bit softer. This stuff, even though it's 1.9, like this new stuff is way more dense. I mean, and it might be just a touch heavier, but I think it's still a much better core than even the stuff I was doing over the first 400 boards. I think the stuff I'm getting now is even better. So, but anyway, this is a sample of some of the black PP, and like I said, it's got a little more air pockets, and I think this had a little bit more rebound and pop to it than if you're comparing the old white PP versus the new stuff I'm getting now. This stuff seemed like it had a little bit more life to it. I don't know. Other than that, it's the exact same material, it's just different color. So as far as the differences go, well, first off the color, but after that, you can't really compare this old stuff to the new stuff. You really have to go old to old and compare those two. And if you did, they really look a little bit very similar. But like I said, I think the black this black still had a little bit more air pockets in between it. So I don't know. Like I said, I don't even have this stuff right now. I know I can order it from my new supplier, but it's actually even more expensive than getting the white. So, I try to keep the cost down for my customers the best I can. And I like to provide a range of options when it comes to core, but if this stuff is good, no, you can't see the core. All you can do is feel it. So as long as the quality is good, it doesn't matter what the color is. So for now, I'm just going to have white, at least out for the next order core is all going to be white. There's no black in it, but that's kind of some of the differences, at least between the two cores that I've had in the past. So now, and like I said, then you have this is a piece of PE core, so you can, and I've pulled this piece out before and done some little stress tests with it. But you can see how this stuff, you bend it and it really does pop back to shape almost instantly. Then even this stuff's even stiff. The newer one's even stiffer, and it pops back super fast. Now you grab a piece of PE core and you bend it, and look at it. So I don't know how you want your board to react, but I don't want my board taking 5 minutes to get back to flat. I realize there's skins that help pull everything back to shape, but if you're starting with this, it's, I don't want my board to be like this, man. So don't expect to see me using this for core anytime soon. Just not my cup of tea. If you want a board like this, there's other people out there, and there's plenty of other boards, guys that'll build you a PE core board. I'm just probably not your shaper. So if anybody's got any questions about the PP cores, feel free to fire away. But so, the next topic is that I wanted to get into, and while I have these pieces out, we're going to kind of talk about that, is the very first step of making a board is sanding the core. Okay, so when I get the cores from the core supplier, they come in either 2 or 3 inch pieces, and I've talked about this in the past, but they get cut out of a big block that's 4 foot by 6 foot by 6 inches thick. So if I'm cutting 2-inch blanks that are 2 foot wide by 4 foot long, I get 9 pieces out of one block, and I got to buy them in increments of 9. So, but sometimes I'll get that block cut into 3-inch pieces, and I only get 6 pieces out of it. So obviously, but I can make a thicker board. So out of a 2-inch piece of thick core, I can make a board up to 2 3/8 after you stack all the stuff on it. But then, say if I wanted a board that's 2 1/8 versus 2 3/8, I just have to start with this 2-inch piece of core. But what I got to do is I got to, even no matter what, I still got to clean up the faces of the pieces that come to me, right? So when it comes from the core supplier, they either hot wire cut these foam pieces or they use a horizontal bandsaw to cut it. But the faces of the like the top and the bottom faces that you're going to laminate to need to be super flat and super parallel. So you don't want any inconsistencies of thickness through, but you want the same all the way through. So and you also wanted a specific thickness. So like I said, if you're going you want a 2 3/8 board, what beer am I drinking? Hey, good to see you, Andrew. Glad you made it. So you want to be sanding the core to thickness depending on how you want the finished board to finish out at. So if I had a 2-inch thick core and I want to make a 2 3/8 inch board, I barely got to skim it through the sander on both sides. I want to clean up both faces, and that's the very first step. Is you grab a piece of a blank core and you look at how thick is the finished board, and then you got to do some math trying to figure out how thick to sand the core to thickness, so that way the board finishes out at the target thickness. So if I wanted like a 2 1/8, usually it's about 3/8 of an inch, depending on the skins you use. That's about how much you subtract off. So you want to. That's what I use. They use a what they call a drum sander, and it's not a cheap tool, as Andrew can attest. I think he just got his drum sander today, which is pretty exciting for him. Andrew shapes boards on the East Coast of the United States, so he's getting his shop up and going. He's been making boards for a little while, but he's still missing a couple things. But he got a big piece of the puzzle today, which is pretty exciting for him, I'm sure. And it's called it's a wide belt drum sander, and then these things are industrial machines. So you need a big one because the cores that you're sanding are 2 feet wide by 4 foot long, right? So you got to shove these things through, and what it does is it has rollers on the inside of it that are wrapped with sandpaper. So you have like a round roller, and it's wrapped with sandpaper around that, and there's two successive grits. So you're sanding the first one at 80 grit, and then 120s on the backside. So it progressively gets finer as you're pushing it through. So, and what you do is you just take small bites and you sand. You flip the core backwards and forwards, and you just sand the two faces equally through the drum sander. And that's how you clean up the faces of the core. And then after that, you start laying out all the points after that. Once you get the thing sanded to thickness, then you start laying out all the points on for the shape of the board. But it all starts with that drum sander. I got the manual for mine. So the thing, it's a big industrial machine. I have a Delta 26-inch one. I think Andrew just got a Shot Fox one, but it's basically the same thing. Hey, Nick, glad to see you made it, man. So this is my sander's just sitting off camera, but I'm not going to spin my laptop around to show it. So, but that's kind of what it looks like. It's a big, and then this table goes up and down, and it adjusts with the handle right here. So you just spin this handle, and this table goes up and down, and all the rollers are up inside here that do all the sanding. And then this thing pulls the piece of core through and then sands it to thickness. And then, like I said, you flip the core over and back. You only want to feed it through one way too. Like you always want to figure out what the nose of the board's going to be and what is up. You always got to. We covered that last week, the little marks I put on the board, the edge of the board before I even start sanding. So I know what's the nose and what's up on the board. And then you flip and flop the piece top and bottom and clean up those two faces until they're completely parallel and flat. And that's the first step of the board. And I really don't think you can build a proper body board unless you have one of those sanders. It's just, because you've got to clean up those two faces before you laminate the skins to them. Otherwise, it's going to look terrible. You can't, people might try to do it with a hand sander or something, but you're never going to get it flat and parallel across the whole blank of the board unless you can sand it all the way through. Andrew, what beer am I drinking tonight? I'm drinking a mango IPA from Barrel House Brewing Company, and it's in the North Carolina Bodyboarders koozie here. So that's the beer of choice tonight. It's happy hour here. I'm allowed. I'm not playing with machinery. Sterling, I think this has been asked, but what fins do I wear? I actually covered that in one of the Boog Chats. You obviously haven't been going back and watching them all because I pulled out all my fins and things that are ones that I use. But I pretty much use most days the MS Vipers, the ones that have the not the deltas. I don't like asymmetrical fins. I have a pair of Delta MS Delta Vipers, but I really do prefer the regular. The softer ones too. I use the orange dot MS Vipers most days. I also have a pair of Tech 2s that I like a lot too. So when I tombstone on smaller days, and because I DK a little bit more on my tombstone, I kind of like my Tech 2s. They're nice and soft silicone. Those things are really good fins too. It really ultimately comes down to what fin fits your foot and how it feels. So yeah. So yeah, you basically just got to try on a bunch of different fins and see how they feel on your feet and see how they kick in the water and what you like. I know there's some guys out there that swear by yuccas and or blunt. I rode blunt cuts for absolute years. I mean, obviously because I was a Toobs guy, I had piles of blunt cuts, man. It was crazy. I still have a pair of yellow ones. I broke those out in one of the previous chat too and showed the old school solid yellow ones that are the OG rubber that are nice and soft versus like the harder rubbers that are in some of the blunt cuts these days. But, those yellow blunt cuts, I still take those every once in a while on a trip with me, but I like I said, I really love my MS Vipers. I've been riding those things since I left Toobs, and it's the exact same pair of fins I've been riding for over 5 years. They've lasted an incredibly long time, and they still look great. And I use Hubboard fin savers, the ones that clip around your ankle. They're awesome on fins, man. I highly recommend those things. Andrew's asking about the injection molding. That's one of the things that, like I was talking about, how the cores are cut up. So he's asking about the injection molding spots on the core pieces. So I get the blank core pieces from my distributor, the foam distributor, and how they cut them up. Sometimes there's because that big block, how it's made from the manufacturer, there's like a mold, and there's like these spots where they inject gases and and expands all the beads, right? Well, those little injection spots sometimes, I don't think you can't see them on any of the pieces I have here because they've all been kind of sanded off. That's part of the thing with the drum sander, because sometimes when you're sanding the core, you'll see those little injection spots on certain pieces. Now it's also how the cores are cut up, because like I said, it's 6 inches thick with a big block. So you only see those injection pieces on the very outside of the big block. So like I said, you're getting 3 pieces out of that block, because it's a 6-inch block and you're getting cut into 2-inch thick pieces. So you only see those on this face and then the under face. So that center piece, you'll never see any injection molding on that, because that's the center part of the big block. And really, there's different densities also. I think cores are a little bit more dense on that very, very outside of the big block. So where you see the injection molding, that's the outside shell of the big block. And if you don't see any injection moldings, that's the center core of the block. And I think the center core pieces tend to be just a hair softer than the ones that are on the very, very outside. So, Andrew, that might be something to pay attention when you start getting your core pieces. Just start paying attention to where those injection molding spots are out on those core pieces, and also when you're running it through the sander, sometimes those little injection spots, if they're hard, can sometimes streak across the board when you're sanding. It gets a little messy on the drum sander sometimes when you're doing that. But you'll learn that all in time as you get into your drum sander. Let's see where. Jay Cran's asking, I was wondering if you could talk about the wave selection and the differences about approaching a wave on a bodyboard versus a surfboard. Well, I've only stood up on a surfboard like twice, so I can't really talk to you about that part of it, but I can talk to you about wave selection and the differences about approaching a wave. I mean, yeah, that's first off, there's no substitute for water time. You got to put your time in the water, and you got to try to ride different kinds of waves too, just to get experience with different types of conditions and different types of waves. That's it just takes time and getting out in the water and going to different waves. It really is. It's critical for your education and making you have some wave knowledge and where you want to be on the wave and how being able to read. I was lucky. I like my beach break out front here. It's just it's just a sandbar beach break, and the sandbars shift depending on the time of year. But there's no real true defined peak, like where if you have like a reef break or something or a point break, waves break very consistently in those types of conditions, in exact same spot. And I want to say it's like machine-ish because waves are all different in the ocean. Even though if it's a point break, it's just peeling down the point. But that wave might be better. The wave behind might be better than the one in front of it, and that only comes down to being able to read the lines and know the wave and the spot and where to put yourself and where to line up for the takeoff. All that stuff just comes from knowledge and experience in water time. Yeah, so I think that bodyboarders can definitely take off later than surfers. It seems like, there's a lot of really talented surfers who can take off under the lip of a wave, a barreling wave and stuff, but really on a bodyboard, because you don't have to stand up, you can take off so late on a bodyboard and get hucked out into the wave or hucked out in the flats and still make a turn. Or if you're trying to do that and stand up, you're going to eat it and crash, dude. There's something cool about a bodyboard for that, because you don't have to stand up and you can take off later and you can take off on a steeper section. It just seems like you have more freedom on a bodyboard than maybe sometimes you do on a stand-up surfboard. But like I said, I don't stand up surf. I don't really know, but I grew up skateboarding and snowboarding. I definitely understand the whole stand on the board and pumping and transitions and airs and all. And I grew up doing all that stuff on a skateboard and snowboard, but said I got really bad knees. Both of them have been operated on because of skateboarding and snowboarding. So that's kind of why I've never stood up surfed. I just want a bodyboard, be able to do that forever. And I knew if I was going to stand up surf, I'm going to mess my knees up more. So I'm just going to be a bodyboarder. I'm going to stay in my lane. But wave selection, like I said, if you're riding a beach break, you got to really learn to read wave lines coming in. I think that's one of the good things about my beach break out front is that it really taught me how to. What if I swim 10 feet that way? Is it going to be a better place to take off than 10 feet over this way because of the swell line and the swell direction and all that stuff? And like I said, it's all wave knowledge and being able to read the smallest little deviation in the ocean and how it goes and where I should position myself. And then obviously if you're surfing with a bunch of people, then that adds another element to it. And it's like, can I swim 10 feet over that? Or am I going to be sitting on top of somebody who's already in the right spot? And that's kind of, you don't want to be that guy in the water where you're hassling somebody who's when the wave's coming right to them. I don't know. I'm not into hassling people, and I'm definitely not into being hassled. So if a wave's coming straight to me and you're going to paddle 20 feet over and try to take it from me, good luck, man. I mean, I'm going. You're not going to have a good time on that wave if you try to do that to me. I'm in the spot, man. Let me have the wave and look for the next wave that's behind that. That's what I would do if I saw a wave coming into where you're at. I want to just sit there and watch you take off and you go paddle. I mean, I'd rather scream somebody into a wave than go over and hassle them for it, because I know as soon as they take off and go, as long as there's not another guy sitting close to them, I can paddle right over there, and there might be one right behind that, and I can get that. So I think there's something to be said to being a little more patient in the water and being a little more courteous to the people around you. That goes a long way in the water, man. Because I'd say you show people by example. I mean, believe me, I've yelled at plenty of people in the water for hassling me, and that's just, you get to the boiling over point and it happens. But I try to control myself a little more these days and put things in perspective. Yeah. So I mean hey, if anybody has any questions, throw them into the chat. Chat window. I don't know. It's over on this side, or maybe it's down below if you're on a phone. Like I said, I think there's a live chat button somewhere down low. If you're watching on a phone, you might be able to get in and make comments if you don't know how to do that. I think there's some button down there on a phone. I know. Sterling, do you watch on your phone? How do you make comments in here? Because I don't really watch on my phone, so I don't really know how to get in there if you're watching on your phone to make comments. I think there's like a live chat button or something. Yeah, so that's a few things about the core and the drum sander. Like I said, it's really critical to have one of those drum sanders. I don't think you can build a proper bodyboard without it. If anybody's got any questions, throw it in the chat. I can't wait to. Yeah, so you're right. I know. I thought you watched on your phone, Sterling, but how do you make your comments right there, like the one you just typed in? I know there's some people that have been asking me about that. If they're watching on a phone, how do they make comments? And like I said, I think you got to. Jack's asking what the standard thickness for a boogie board is. It has to be, yeah, I know you have to be live to be able to comment, but some people are like getting on, they can watch the feed, but they don't know how to make a comment. But I think there's like a button you have to press, Sterling, to pull up so you can like start typing in on your phone if you want to make comments. I think it's called live chat. There's a button that says live chat. Jack, what's the standard thickness of a boogie board? Depends on what, I mean, these days stuff's usually in that, like I said, it's all rider specific, and that's the beautiful thing about a custom. If you look at most like off the shelf boards, they're probably in that anywhere between 2 to 2 1/4 these days. People don't get up into the 2 3/8 unless you're going to start looking for high volume like stock boards. Most stock boards are in that 2 to 2 1/4 range. They don't really deviate too much, and really 2 is kind of on the thinner side. And I'd say probably 2 1/8 is probably right in the range of a lot of boards. Like I said, I don't get my hands on a lot of production boards. I mean, I work in my garage every day and I build my boards, and I get to see boards when I go into the foam company on Maui. The last time I was there, that's always great, going in there and being able to actually put my hands on some other model boards. I just don't get to see a lot of other brand boards. I ride my boards, and I don't really ride with a lot of other riders. A lot of the time, I'm just kind of a solo guy. I don't really hook up with people and go. I have been going with a couple guys, but I'm really just a solo rider a lot. In fact, most of my friends that I ride with all the time, they're stand-up surfers. I'm the only bodyboarder a lot in the groups that I ride with. So, yeah, I'd say 2 1/8 is about the standard. That's kind of about the range. I usually go from about 2 1/16 to 2 1/8 on most of my boards here at home in the cold water. And when I go to Hawaii, I like a little bit more, volume in my board. So I've been doing that step deck number 212, and then 420 also has a step deck on it too. So it's got a little bit more thickness in the center part of the board. Basically on the center where this contour is at, in the center part of the board, that's an 1/8 inch thicker than the outside part of the rail. So I can't wait to ride that 420 board. I've ridden 212 on my last 2 Hawaii trips. It works great, and it works great in Hawaii. Other than the step bottom, it had like almost like a step bottom quad on it. I mean, it tracks really well, but I think I like my 3 to 6 bottoms maybe just a hair better, just because in the front part of that board, because that center bump is an 8 inch thicker. It's a little bitey on spins. I think that's one of the things I didn't like it. I don't want to say I didn't like the board. I still like it. I'll take it on with me on my next couple of Hawaii trips for sure. I love it. But I just think as far as if I was going to build another one, because I did, like 420 is basically a cold water version of that board. I just did a 3 to 6 bottom on that, but I still stepped the top part of the board because I like the extra volume. Plus, I'm getting a little bit thicker as I get older, so I put on a little, maybe 10 pounds over the last 2 years. So I'm riding just a hair thicker board than what I was, maybe 5 to 10 years ago. All my older boards were in the 2 inch range. Like any of my first few Ronin boards, so the first 100, 150, any of my boards in that range, number boards, was in the 2 1/16 range. That's probably what I was riding for quite a while. I was starting to get a little bit thicker, so thicker board, thicker body. Anybody's got any questions, throw them in. Got about 10 minutes to go here, so I know there's a couple things I'm already thinking about. But hey, I'm also probably not gonna be around next Friday, so there's a good chance I'm not gonna be able to do this again next. It's like the first one I've missed now in quite a few weeks, so I'm not going to be here probably next Friday. There's a good chance probably not even the Friday after that. I'm going to be out of town on a little trip with my with some family. So yeah, I probably won't be able to do these for the next 2 weeks. So, but I'm still going to be doing them as soon as I get back home and in the shop, and I'm here on a Friday. Who knows? I might even do it on an off day just to kind of fill in some space, because I know if people want to watch these things, so I might sit down and do a few even on an off day if I get back and I'm itching to do it. But if I'm not here around the next 2 Fridays, then that's just what it is. I'll do them as often as I can, and if I'm around at home and I'm in the shop, and I'll be doing these things every Friday for a while. I'm really enjoying pulling out some of the older boards and kind of and showing the evolution of my personal customs and how all the evolution of the contours and the different ideas that I've incorporated over the years have evolved into the boards I'm riding these days. So you'll be able to see all that through the boards and all of my customs and how it's all evolved. It's going to be a really cool journey to see all those boards. It's fun for me to pull them out and kind of reminisce about what those boards and the places that I took them and stuff too. So it'll be fun. Like I said, in some of these early boards, I was just learning how to ride. I wasn't really doing any trips to Hawaii yet. I was still just riding around here around the Morro Bay area. So, and earning my stripes. There's a lot of quality waves around here, and there's a lot of different types of waves. There's not a lot of shore break around here. I know that's like a lot of the Southern California waves. There's a lot of shore break down there, but around my parts, there's not a lot of shore break waves. A lot of open beaches, and there's some reefs on if you're willing to drive a little bit. Not any really true point breaks around here, but I go down to Ventura and Santa Barbara and those types of areas every once in a while, get some proper point break. I love Rincon. I've been out there quite a few times out at Rincon. So I love me some Rincon. Yeah. I love distance on a wave. I know a lot of guys just love pulling into shore break. It's a huge part of bodyboarding. It's a huge part of it. There's a lot of people, and that's all they do. And that's cool, man. I like all the disciplines of riding, but me, I'm too old to get pounded into the sand too. It's just, that's part of the deal about riding into couple inches of water and there's a head high barrel. You're going to get smashed into the sand. It's just part of the deal. I'm a little too old for that. I'd rather have a little more water around me than that. So exactly, Nick. I'm too old to get pounded in the sand. Plus, I got boards to make. I can't get hurt. So I gotta be a little on the conservative side when it comes to getting pounded. Sterling asks, what's my favorite wave I've ever ridden? Shoot, I don't know. I love my beach break out front. It has some just absolute epic days out there. I don't know. Is it my favorite wave to ride? Probably because I can walk to it from my house. And I've been barreled out of my mind out there. I've gotten, 30-second rides, no problem out there. There's multiple sandbars, so you can on a good big winter day, if the sandbars are double sandbarring out, you can chip in on the outside, get completely barreled on that, then it backs off, and you can kind of set up and spin and carve and do all this stuff, and then it hits the inside sandbar. You can get barreled again and still make it out. I've got some absolutely amazing waves up front, and most people will tell you that my beach sucks, and it's so weird. I think it's just because I spent so much time out there. I understand how the wave works and where to position and how to read the waves. We were talking about that earlier. It's just the wave knowledge that I have out there because I spent so much time in the water there. I just love my home break. There's something that sticks in my head is that you're never too good to ride your home break. There's lots of good waves to go out and explore and find, and I think it's a really big part of learning and riding. But there's nothing like your home break. You see your friends and you see all the people you know, and there's friendly faces in the water instead of the angry, grumpy dude who's like, "Where are you from? I've never seen you out here before." You get all that when you go to travel and you go ride different waves. It's just part of the experience. But just try to be respectful and keep a smile on your face, man. But other waves, I prefer going left, but man, I'm telling you, I love Rincon. I've caught some absolutely incredible. It's a right-hand point break here, down in Carpinteria, Santa Barbara area. I've gotten some. My thing was I for quite a few years I would go on Christmas morning because I didn't really have a lot of family obligations. So what I would do is I just wake up at like 4:30 in the morning and I power down and just absolute dawn patrol on Christmas morning. Only if there was a swell. But I've absolutely scored Rincon quite a few Christmas mornings with nobody out there. There's like 3 people that lived on the point, and there was just the parking lot was empty and it's a little bit overhead and just peeling down the point. And you can have your pick of whatever wave you want. That never happens at Rincon. If you know how Rincon is, it is anytime it's breaking, there's 200-300 guys on it. It's our Gold Coast or our Snapper Rocks in California. When it's breaking, it is just absolutely packed with people. But man, I tell you what, Christmas morning, I've absolutely scored it, and I've been sitting at the top of Rincon Point by myself, and there's just like, okay, which one do I want? I could just have my pick of any wave that came in. That never happens at Rincon, especially if you're on a bodyboard. I mean, you get even less love when you're riding a bodyboard. So you got to, but I've been out there with, a gang load of people, and then I've been out there when it's an empty lineup. So that's one of my favorite waves, hands down. I mean, I can drive. I mean, it's a little bit of a drive, but at certain times on certain strikes, you can really, really have a good time at Rincon. There's also 2 reef breaks here in our bay that are pretty much world class. I mean, really, they're as good as a wave can be. So on a south swell, there's some stuff up north at Cayucas that can be really, really good. It's kind of kelpy, so you have to swim through some crazy kelp beds to get out to it. But man, there's just a perfect little A-frame peak out there if you know where to look. Kind of more bowly and rappy on the left, and then just kind of a long drawn out right that just goes mushy. That was a super fun wave but it only really does it on a proper south swell. And then there's another reef break that's out on the south end of the bay that I don't know. It's kind of one of them local spots that you're not really supposed to talk about, even though if you search it on Google, you can probably find it. So, but that wave is pretty much awesome. I mean, it's an incredible wave. So that, as far as if I don't want to ride my beach break, and then the Morro Rock is one of my favorite waves too. It's just on certain days there, you can get some amazing good lefts off the rock that just are like 100-yard long lefts. It's just incredible how long you can ride a wave out there on a good day. It's a lot of paddling, but boy, it's a lot of fun too. So other than that, I mean, I've done some trips to the North Shore of Oahu, so I definitely have put a little bit of time in there. I stayed right in front of Lani Kea for quite a few years, and that's a right-hand reef break that works a lot like a point break. So it just runs down the reef there. It's like a right-hander that just goes for quite a ways. I really love Lani Kea. It's a fun wave. And then Himalayas is on the other side of that. So I spent a lot of time riding Himalayas and Lani Kea. Probably more. I've ridden those spots more than anywhere on the North Shore, just because I was staying right there, and I wasn't going to go down to Pipe or Rocky Point and deal with the crowds down there. I'd rather just go out the back of the house. So, yeah, those 2 waves for me, I have a soft spot on the North Shore for those 2 waves, just because I spent a lot of time out there. But I did get to ride Rocky Point this last winter, and V-Land was really fun, and Makaha was absolutely a blast too. I got to surf Makaha on the west side of Oahu. That was an awesome day. So yeah, I mean, I have a few favorite waves that I've ridden, but like I said, my wave out front is fine for me most days. So looks like I've got 6 people here. If anybody's got any questions, feel free to ask away. I've also been trekking up north a little bit. If you go up north, up Highway 1 here, there's some spots up north that can be really fun too. So, but like I said, I love my home breaks. There's something about it. There's some really good waves around the jetties of Morro Bay too, on certain swells. So if you got to know where to go and on what angle of swell and whatnot, you can find some really fun waves around the jetties on the south side of the Morro Rock. We usually surf on the north side of Morro Rock. If you pulled up like a Google Maps of Morro Bay, there's a big rock, and you surf on the north side of that. You can drive. There's a big parking lot right there. You can drive right out to the rock and park right in front of it. It's super easy access. There's a surf line cam too, so you can pull up and check it and stuff too. I mean, there's a surf line cam even for my beach out here. It's called Morro Strand North is kind of the section. There's Morro Strand North and Morro Strand South. Those are the 2 different cameras that are kind of out the beach out in front of my house. But I'm usually kind of in the Morro Strand North section of that camera. Just usually a little bit south of that. But you sometimes you pull that camera, you can probably see me riding in some mornings because I'm right out in front of that camera towards the point of the beach there. Anybody got any questions? Fire away. We got a couple minutes to go, so we're kind of getting down to the end of this one. Let's see. Do I have an algorithm formula? Okay. Nathaniel's asking about an algorithm or a formula to figure out board volume. No. It's one of the really hard things to do with the bodyboard because the shapes change. I mean, the only way to really truly calculate volume, that's why the surfboard shapers are so good about this stuff, is that everything's CNC shaped. So the whole core of a surfboard's all modeled on a computer, and then the computer can generate all the mass and the volume or the volume. So you'll know exactly how many liters or however they measure surfboards. For a boogie board, because it's all, most of them are hand shaped, there's no computer model to be able to generate those numbers. So you'd have to sit down and try to calculate mass, and then you have all, it'd be an insane calculation to try to figure that out, because every board, and what if this board's a 1/4 inch wider or a 1/4 inch shorter, and the nose is pulled in a little bit, or this, and then you have radiuses and angles, and then tails are different, and you got the nose cut on the bottom. There's all these things that, and channels that all take out mass out of a board or change the mass of a board. So, I mean, there's ways I've seen that you can do water dunk tests. That's another thing that there's ways to measure that, but they have to take the board and dunk it into water and then measure the offset of that and calculate that volume. And then that's how you can figure out how much volume the board is. But I'm not going to do that to a brand new board and go shove it into a tank just to figure out how much volume it is. And then I have to have some big water tank that's full of water just so I can shove it in and measure the volume change of the water. And then that will, tell you how much water's in the board is offsetting, so that's how you know how much mass is in the board. That's the only way I really have seen to be able to do measure volume. So now 42 inch, 44 inch, 21 and a half, 21, 22 wide, 18 inch tail, 12 inch nose. There's just standard stuff. 2 1/8, 2 1/4, 2 3/8 thick. Yeah, and maybe something else I missed on the core stuff is that the 3-inch cores that I get 2 and 3 inch cores, but the 3-inch cores, those I can sand down, so I can make things that if the 2-inch core, like I said, it makes only up to 2 3/8 inch thick boards. So a 3-inch thick core, I mean, obviously if I just real lightly sanded and put skins on that, it would be almost 3 3/8 inch thick. So that's, I mean, you can hardly even get your hands around that. It's so thick. But that core, if you just take and sand that, I can sand that core down anywhere between 3 and 2 inches, so I can make boards thicker than 2 3/8 the standard cores will only go up to. So those 3-inch cores add some versatility and some options as far as if you want a thicker board above 2 3/8, if you want a 2.5 inch thick board. But then I have to run it through the drum sander a bunch of times to sand off a 1/2 inch, basically just making a 1/2 inch of dust off that, and right into the dust collector and right into the recycle bin. So it's like it's a hard thing to watch. It's like when I've done a lot of woodworking. It's like when you buy this beautiful, beautiful figured board, and then you go cutting it all up and planing and sanding it all up, and it's the most expensive sawdust ever. When you're cutting through this big old chunk of beautiful wood, it breaks your heart to do it sometimes, but you got to. Just like sanding a 1/2 inch I want my board 2.5 inch thick, but a normal core will go up to 2 3/8. It's only an 1/8 inch. I wanted my board an 1/8 inch thicker than what the standard is. Now I got to sit there and sand 5/8 of an inch off of that 3-inch piece to get down to the thickness that I need. Is because it's just that's a part of the job, but no, just like if, like I said, it all gets back to the cost of the block. I got to buy that big block. I cut it all up. I get 9 pieces of 2 inch. I get only 6 pieces of 3 inch. So those 3-inch core pieces of for thicker boards, I just got to charge more for those boards because the raw material costs me more per piece, right? The blocks are X amount, and how many pieces do you get out? It's just a math thing about how much each individual core costs. But if it's a 3-inch, if I only get 6, those pieces are basically a third more than what the other ones are. So that's just part of the deal. If you want it thicker than 2 3/8, I got to charge you a little bit more for the extra thick core. Like I said, we're past 7 o'clock. So if anybody's got any other questions, toss it in. I really do appreciate everybody coming out in the comments and everything. So, hopefully we can get a bigger turnout, everyone, and keep this thing going. And like I said, the more comments and more interactions I can get from people, the more fun that this is for everybody, and the more educational it is for everybody. So. Yeah, Jack, just let me know. Jack says thinking he might want to get a thicker one next time. That's fine. I actually, the core that I have coming right now, I did get 6 pieces of the 3-inch, and one of them's already sold out of the next batch of boards. So, but I still have 5 more pieces of 3-inch right now. Then like I said, I'll definitely be getting more. It just all depends on demand. Most of the time I order mostly 2-inch pieces just because most boards are under 2 3/8 thick. most, so it's all, demand. So what that generates on how much I get of what. So yeah, I guess if there's no more questions, I'll start to sign off and just say, I want to say, yeah, thanks for everybody for coming out. And I guess it might be time for some dinner. So everybody, I hope everybody scores some waves over the weekend. Have a good one. And I guess I'll just say ciao for now. Thanks a lot, guys. Hold on, I got a question. Can I repost the skins and decks you have? Yeah, Jack. Or either that, or just hit me up in the Instagram, and I'll shoot you the pictures that I have. So I mean, I really should get the color spread and instead of just putting it in the Instagram story, I should probably do a fixed post so people can see stuff. So, but hit me up, I'll send you the pictures. All right, guys, thanks a lot. Ciao for now.